Something massive is happening across Europe, and most people aren't ready for it. Countries that once opened their doors to millions of immigrants are now slamming them shut. Deportations are surging, asylum rules are collapsing, and borders are tightening faster than anyone expected. In 2026, Europe isn't just changing its immigration policy, it's rewriting the entire system. And the consequences are going to shock millions of people on both sides of the border. Europe's immigration reset is underway. Something historic is unfolding across Europe, quietly, rapidly, and with consequences that will reshape the continent for years to come. For more than a decade, Europe positioned itself as a refuge. Open borders, humanitarian values, a promise that anyone fleeing war, poverty, or instability would find safety. Millions arrived. Cities expanded, systems stretched, and governments insisted the model was sustainable. But in 2026, that era is ending. Across the continent, immigration policies are hardening at record speed. Deportations are surging. Asylum approvals are collapsing. Borders that once symbolized unity are being reinforced with walls, surveillance towers, and emergency laws. And countries that once welcomed migrants are now actively forcing them out. This isn't a temporary political swing. It's a structural reset. Governments are under pressure from every direction. Housing shortages, rising crime, overloaded welfare systems, voters demanding control, and geopolitical tensions that have turned migration into a weapon rather than a humanitarian issue. The result? Europe is turning inward. And today we're counting down 10 European countries leading this shift in 2026. Nations that are no longer debating immigration reform but executing it at scale. Some of these policies are already in place, others are expanding fast, and a few will shock you. Let's start with number 10. Number 10, Latvia. Latvia might be small, with fewer than 2 million residents, but in 2026 it's become one of Europe's most aggressive border defenders. Sitting on the eastern edge of the EU, Latvia shares long borders with Russia and Belarus, two countries accused of deliberately pushing migrants toward Europe to create instability. Latvian officials no longer see migration as humanitarian. They see it as hybrid warfare, and they're responding accordingly. In 2026, Latvia has expanded deportations at record levels, with removals up sharply compared to previous years. Border patrol budgets have ballooned. Advanced surveillance systems now line the frontier. Thermal cameras, motion sensors, and drone patrols operating around the clock. But the most controversial move? Legalized pushbacks. Migrants crossing illegally are no longer processed through lengthy asylum systems. They are immediately turned back at the border. No interviews, no appeals. Human rights groups are furious. Latvia's government doesn't budge. Officials argue that survival as a nation comes first. At the same time, Latvia has tightened residency laws. Permanent residence now takes far longer to obtain. Language requirements are stricter. And long-term residents who fail integration tests risk losing legal status. The result has been a steady exodus, especially among Russian-speaking communities. As thousands leave voluntarily rather than face deportation. Latvia's message in 2026 is blunt. Entry is no longer guaranteed, and staying is no longer automatic. Number 9. Greece's for years. Greece was Europe's front door. Millions arrived through the Aegean Sea. Camps overflowed. Entire islands were transformed into processing zones. And while Greece carried the burden, the rest of Europe debated solutions. In 2026, Greece has had enough. Asylum approvals have been slashed, detention periods extended. Deportation flights now operate at a pace unseen in decades. Migrants whose applications are denied are removed faster than ever, often within weeks. Border enforcement in the Aegean has intensified dramatically. High-speed patrol boats, aerial drones, AI-assisted surveillance systems scanning the coastline day and night. But the biggest shift is diplomatic. Greece has expanded return agreements with multiple countries, streamlining deportations and bypassing slow EU processes. If an applicant is rejected, the path back home is immediate. Detention laws have also changed. Asylum seekers can now be held for extended periods while cases are reviewed, a move designed to deter arrivals before they even begin the journey. Public opinion has shifted sharply. After years of pressure on housing, services, and security, voters overwhelmingly support tougher measures. Greece is no longer Europe's waiting room. It's a gatekeeper. Number 8, Austria. Austria sits at the crossroads of Europe, and in 2026, it's using that position to clamp down hard. After receiving hundreds of thousands of asylum applications over the past decade, public patience has snapped. The government has responded with one of the strictest enforcement frameworks in Central Europe. Asylum approvals are at historic lows, deportations are prioritized, and migrants who previously qualified for long-term residence are now facing new hurdles, especially if they've ever received government assistance. Citizenship applications are being blocked for applicants with welfare history. Residency renewals are scrutinized aggressively, and border surveillance has expanded along key transit routes. Austria is also backing external processing proposals, moving asylum reviews outside EU borders altogether. The goal is simple: make Austria a destination of last resort. Supporters argue this protects social systems and national stability. Critics warn of exclusion and legal violations. But in 2026, Austria isn't backing down. Number 7, Denmark. Denmark's transformation may be the most startling. Once seen as progressive and open, Denmark has quietly built one of Europe's most restrictive immigration regimes, and in 2026, it's doubling down. Asylum approvals are near zero. Deportations are accelerating, and the asylum process itself has been outsourced beyond Europe's borders. Migrants arriving in Denmark are no longer processed on Danish soil. Instead, applications are reviewed abroad, making entry into the country increasingly rare. Residency permits are being revoked, even for migrants who have lived in Denmark for years, if authorities determine their home countries are safe enough to return to. Integration laws are stricter. Movement is regulated. Non-compliance carries serious consequences, including removal. Public support remains strong. Danish voters see the policy as necessary to protect social cohesion and prevent parallel societies. Denmark's position in 2026 is clear. Immigration is no longer a right. It's an exception. The pattern is impossible to ignore. Across Europe, borders are hardening, laws are tightening, and governments are acting with urgency that didn't exist just a few years ago. But the countries we've covered so far are only the beginning. Because as we move deeper into the countdown, the policies become sharper, the numbers grow larger, and the consequences more severe. And the next phase of this reset pushes Europe even further from the system it once defended. The crackdown accelerates. As Europe's immigration reset gains momentum, the measures grow sharper, faster, and far less symbolic. What started as tighter borders is now becoming full-scale enforcement. Governments are no longer experimenting, they're executing. And for millions of migrants across the continent, the margin for error is disappearing. Let's continue the countdown. Number 6, Italy. Italy has lived with migration pressure longer than almost any country in Europe. For years, boats arrived daily across the Mediterranean. Reception centers overflowed. Local governments buckled under the strain, and promises of EU support repeatedly fell short. In 2026, Italy's patience is gone. The government has rolled out one of the most aggressive immigration strategies in its modern history. Deportations are up sharply, with targets that dwarf previous years. Undocumented migrants are being removed at record speed, and the system is designed to minimize delays. But Italy's most dramatic move goes beyond deportation. Asylum processing has been shifted outside the country. Migrants intercepted at sea are no longer guaranteed entry onto Italian soil. Instead, many are transferred to external processing centers, where their cases are reviewed far from Italy's cities and courts. The intent is clear: remove the incentive to arrive in the first place. Italy has also intensified its crackdown on smuggling networks. Boats used for illegal crossings are being seized in large numbers. Humanitarian groups operating rescue missions face heavy fines and legal consequences for bringing migrants to Italian ports. Supporters argue the policy saves lives by discouraging dangerous crossings. Critics say it abandons humanitarian responsibility. But in 2026, Italy is no longer debating optics. It's enforcing outcomes. Number 5, Poland. Poland has taken one of the hardest lines in Europe, and it's unapologetic about it. Sitting along key eastern migration routes, Poland views uncontrolled migration as a direct threat to national security. And in 2026, the country has turned its borders into fortified barriers. High-tech fencing, constant surveillance, and rapid response patrols now dominate Poland's frontier. Illegal crossings have dropped dramatically. Not because routes disappeared, but because enforcement became immediate. Under emergency laws, migrants caught crossing illegally are deported the same day. There is no prolonged asylum review, no extended detention, no appeal process. Poland has also expanded mass deportation flights, returning thousands of migrants every month to their countries of origin. Charter planes operate continuously, funded directly by the state. Public support is overwhelming. Polish voters see immigration control as essential to preserving culture, stability, and sovereignty. EU criticism has done little to slow the momentum. Poland's stance is simple: borders are non-negotiable. Number 4, Finland. Finland's shift has been quieter, but just as firm. Long known for its calm, stability, and humanitarian reputation, Finland has undergone a sharp policy turn. And in 2026, it's one of the most efficient deporters in Northern Europe. Deportation timelines have been shortened dramatically. Migrants entering illegally can be removed within days. Appeals are limited. Processing is streamlined. Finland has also shut down key border crossings, citing national security concerns and accusations of neighboring states funneling migrants toward its territory. But enforcement doesn't stop at the border. Residency permits are being reviewed aggressively. Migrants whose home countries are reclassified as safe are losing legal status, even if they've lived in Finland for years. Criminal convictions, even minor ones, now dramatically increase the likelihood of deportation. Authorities have prioritized removing foreign offenders, conducting targeted operations to identify and expel individuals deemed a public risk. Public opinion has shifted alongside policy. A growing majority of Finns now support stricter immigration laws, arguing that the welfare system cannot absorb unlimited demand. Finland in 2026 is no longer passive, it's decisive. At this point in the countdown, a clear picture emerges. Europe isn't just tightening borders, it's redefining who belongs. Residency is conditional, asylum is temporary, and enforcement is no longer delayed by politics or optics. But the most dramatic transformations are still ahead. Because as we move into the top 3, the scale changes. The numbers grow larger, the policies more controversial, and the consequences far more visible, not just for migrants, but for European societies themselves. These next countries aren't quietly adjusting rules. They're openly dismantling the systems that once made them symbols of openness, and in doing so, they're reshaping Europe's future in ways that few predicted just a decade ago. The reset is no longer regional, it's continental, and the final phase of this countdown shows just how far Europe is willing to go, and how much it's willing to sacrifice to regain control. Because once these next policies take hold, there's no easy path back. And for millions of people caught in the middle, 2026 may be the year everything changes. Europe draws the line. As the countdown reaches its final stretch, the scale of Europe's immigration reset becomes impossible to deny. What we're seeing now isn't enforcement at the margins. It's a full redefinition of national priorities. The remaining countries aren't just tightening laws. They're rewriting the rules of belonging altogether. Number 3, Sweden. Just a decade ago, Sweden was the symbol of Europe's open-door policy, generous asylum laws, broad social support, a reputation for humanitarian leadership. But by 2026, Sweden has undergone one of the most dramatic immigration reversals on the continent. After absorbing over 1 million migrants in less than 10 years, the system buckled. Crime surged. Gang violence escalated. Housing shortages intensified. And public trust collapsed. The government responded with what it calls a restoration strategy. Deportations are now occurring at record levels. Asylum applications are processed at unprecedented speed, and rejected applicants are removed within weeks, sometimes days. But Sweden's most controversial move goes even further. Entire families are being deported together, even if children were born in Sweden. Authorities argue that legal status is determined by residency, not birthplace. The backlash has been global, but enforcement continues. Social benefits for undocumented migrants have been slashed. Free housing, healthcare access, and welfare support have been sharply reduced, triggering voluntary departures among thousands who can no longer afford to stay. Law enforcement has also been empowered to conduct coordinated operations in high-crime areas, targeting undocumented residents with criminal records. Even minor offenses now carry deportation risk. Public opinion has shifted decisively. A strong majority of Swedish voters support the new approach, prioritizing security and social cohesion over humanitarian optics. Sweden's transformation sends a powerful signal. Even the most welcoming systems have limits. Number 2, Germany. Germany's pivot may be the most consequential of all. As Europe's largest economy and political anchor, Germany set the tone for migration policy throughout the EU for years. Its welcome culture defined an era. But in 2026, Germany has become one of the continent's most aggressive enforcers. The numbers alone are staggering. Tens of thousands of migrants are being deported annually, the highest levels in modern German history. Fast-track removal laws now allow authorities to expel failed asylum seekers in a fraction of the time previously required. Benefits for asylum seekers have been reduced significantly. Housing support cut. Financial assistance limited. The message is clear. Remaining without legal status is no longer viable. Germany has also intensified deportation raids. Police operations now regularly target shelters, transit hubs, and even schools to identify undocumented individuals. These actions have sparked protests, but enforcement continues. Crime has been a central driver. Authorities have prioritized removing foreign nationals with criminal records, deporting thousands linked to theft, violence, and organized crime. Economic pressure plays a role too. With housing shortages worsening and public spending stretched thin, voters have demanded action. Surveys show overwhelming support for stricter deportation laws, even among demographics that once favored open borders. Germany's reset carries enormous weight. When Germany changes course, Europe follows. And that brings us to number 1. Number 1, France. No country has gone further or faster than France. In 2026, France stands at the center of Europe's immigration crackdown, executing policies that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Deportations have reached unprecedented levels. Entire migrant camps have been dismantled. Communities that existed for years have been cleared in a matter of days. France has adopted a zero-tolerance framework. Undocumented migrants, Failed asylum seekers. Foreign nationals deemed a public risk. All face immediate removal. Appeals are limited. Timelines are compressed. Enforcement is relentless. But France's most shocking move goes beyond legal status. Residency permits are being revoked, even from long-term residents, if authorities determine they pose a threat to public order. Dual citizenship holders have been deported. Families have been separated. Entire neighborhoods reshaped overnight. Crime and unrest have accelerated the shift. After years of riots, protests, and violent incidents, the government passed emergency laws granting expanded powers to law enforcement. Deportation of suspected criminals now occurs with minimal judicial delay. Border policy has also hardened dramatically. Asylum applications from certain regions are no longer accepted at all. Arrivals from designated countries are turned away immediately, bypassing traditional asylum processes entirely. Public support is overwhelming. A large majority of French citizens believe previous immigration policies were too lenient and blame them for social fragmentation, insecurity, and economic strain. France's position in 2026 is unmistakable. The era of accommodation is over. And when you step back, the pattern is undeniable. Across Europe, borders are closing. Residency is conditional. Asylum is no longer guaranteed. What began as isolated policy shifts has evolved into a continent-wide reset. This isn't about one country. It isn't about one election. It's about a fundamental recalibration of identity, security, and responsibility. For migrants, the implications are immediate and personal. For governments, the pressure is political and structural. And for Europe as a whole, the consequences will shape demographics, labor markets, and social cohesion for decades. Supporters argue this reset restores order and stability. Critics warn it sacrifices humanitarian values and international law. But regardless of perspective, one truth is unavoidable. Europe has made its choice. In 20,000 and now in 26, the continent is no longer asking how many it can welcome. It's deciding who can stay. And once that line is drawn, history shows it's rarely erased.